Go live, go live, go live in the country. Snakes in the grass.
Welcome to your awakening. Please stay calm as your reality is adjusted.
Please stay calm as your reality adjusted. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back once again. Greetings, well met, fellow hail. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening. It's gone past the 8 p.m. as per usual with me. Well, with us, once we get yakking when I'm setting up the show and whatever. Yeah, usually a minute or two late. So we're here now. We're still here. We're still here. 5 millennium, and they've been out to get us, and we're still here. Let me just adjust the chat box screen so I can see the chat box. Hello to everyone in the chat box. Thanks for joining in. Tuzzy, hello. And the Rebel, hello. And So South, hello. Reality Chatters, Pete's in the room. Dave Iron, hello. And Lynn Anderson, hello. Greetings, well met. Thanks for joining in. I did eventually get to read the chat from last week's episode, but it did not appear under the video from last week until Friday. So it took 5 days for the Google beast, to allow the chat room to be visible, the chat replay that you get with the video replays of these live broadcasts. What the reasoning was for that, don't know. Doesn't really, there's no point trying to figure out the conundrum of whether it was the algorithm, or was it somebody deciding to slow it down? Was it just the server architecture? Was it just the way the software is doing its thing? Whatever. It's convenient for the YouTube propaganda adjustment system to delay the revealing of that live chat, because they know full well that the primary views for a live broadcasting video happens during the broadcast and just after. Within a day, just after the live broadcast usually, is when the video that's available on the channel will accrue more views, because people are like, oh yeah, he did a broadcast last night, I'll go and have a listen. So they know full well all the views for these kind of live broadcasts happen within a day of them happening. So if they just delay the revealing of the chat room for a few days, they can guarantee that the viewers of that, what is now a pre-recorded video on the channel, will not get to see the chat room, because most of those viewers will turn up within the first 24 hours after the actual broadcast has happened. So in other words, they're keeping whatever was in the chat room away from a lot of the viewers that view this kind of content. Convenient that for them, isn't it? Yeah, because then they're not exactly censoring you, are they? Oh, we haven't removed it, it's still there, but only a week later, when most people won't go back to see it. Yeah. But it did turn up eventually. I did get to read through it, like I'm in the habit of doing, because as I was reading through, I saw some people commenting like as if they were trying to get my attention while I was broadcasting. It doesn't work very often. Sorry, most of the time I'm too busy doing me yakking, and I only occasionally look at the chat room. Sometimes I'll do a broadcast where, yes, I focus on the chat room and we can interact and take questions and things like that. But most weeks, no, I've got an idea in my head, a script, narrative explanation of some of the things I've been looking at, and I want to get on with that. So, please don't think it's because I'm ignoring you in the chat room. I'm not. It's just that I don't really look at it because it draws my attention while I'm trying to concentrate on talking about other things. I'm not that kind of multitasking ability where I can read chat room that has multiple conversations going on all at once, as well as talk about the stuff I want to talk about. So this week, it's a bit more lax, is the best way to describe it. I don't exactly have any major revealing or inspirational thread or concept to talk about. So it's a general conversation, if anything. But I will be putting up a few screen shares just to demonstrate, really, to provide some evidence for those people that still struggle with a denial of a lot of this kind of stuff that's happening. Just so you can see, and this isn't stuff that's just from crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy alternative websites that exist in dark corners on the internet. A lot of this stuff is coming now from the mainstream media, or it's emerging onto the internet in such a way that it's pretty much undeniable, because you're getting multiple first person witness point of view kind of examples, the kind of content of people recording their experience going to a protest march, which I'll talk about in a minute. This kind of stuff is coming rapidly now, one after the other, day after day. I've said this a few times in the past, over the past few years, that the level of saturation of this stuff is coming quicker and quicker and quicker. Over the years, we'd often talked about the war of terror, where the terror events would seem to crescendo. They'd build up and there'd be another and another and another in rapid succession, and then there'd be a lull for a while, and then it'd happen again, a succession of rapidly ascending terror threats of one kind or another, or actual events going off. Now we have a similar kind of effect with the infodemic of the COVID-19 propaganda stream that is being projected through the media at the majority of the public. I say the majority because there's some who actively turn it off and leave it alone for whatever their reason. They're not seeing this kind of media saturation. But for the majority of us, you're subjected to it in one way or another. Even if you don't go out looking for it, it's around you in your environment, whether you're directly aware of it or not. So TVs that are on in the background, the radio that's playing while you're at work, the newspapers in the news agents when you go in to buy something. You're not buying a newspaper, but you're still seeing it, and your subconscious is taking all that in at the same time. The little A4 notices that have been strapped to lampposts in various places around the UK, where they'll say things like, remember your social distancing, and they'll show an image of two stylized figures with a big arrow between them to show that they've got to go opposite directions. You've got to split up, folks. You're not allowed to gather together. You've got to separate and socially distance yourself, with that oxymoron. Socially distant. Yeah. So you're seeing this kind of propaganda, whether you're wanting to look for it or not. Yeah, I'm looking at it deliberately because I never thought to type this into the banner thing on the stream, on StreamYard's banner function. So I will do that rapidly just now so that I can show it on screen, just so that it's more clearly seen, rather than trying to be certain of what I said, because maybe you can't understand my accent or the way I talk or whatever. So this is why, considering this system has this functionality, I'll make use of this functionality. Thanks to the commenter on the James Corbett website who posted this quote under one of Corbett's, his most recent newsletter article that he does each month. He puts up a newsletter kind of thing. This is from Sun Tzu, and I'm glad as well that I haven't read that book in so long. So yeah, I should have remembered this quote myself. Quote, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. from Sun Tzu, end quote. This is to make the point of, as I've often mentioned, yes, I will talk about some unpleasant subjects and I'll talk about them from the point of view of, okay, they're presenting us with all this fear porn propaganda. Let's look at the fear porn propaganda and start pulling it to pieces and revealing it for the bullshit that it is, which means you have to look in its direction. And for a lot of people, they don't want to look into the direction of the darkness because they're worried, they're afraid, they don't want to be tainted by it, they don't want to be dragged down by it, they don't want to be made depressed and disempowered by that sensation of when you look in that direction, there's a big pile of shit. Yeah, so it's not an easy thing to deal with. But if you don't look at what the enemy is doing and how they go about doing it, then you will never really be able to address what is happening, because they will always have an advantage on you because they're doing things in a way that you don't expect. So they'll always get you with the sucker punch. They'll always have the surprise ready to catch you when you think you're escaping. It'd be like, oh no, you've just woken up from one paddock into another paddock. You've just been released from one stable into another stable, etc., etc. So you have to be prepared to look in that direction to be able to understand or to know, and understanding not in a legal sense, comprehending, and to know your enemy and how they operate, know how they dance, learn their kata so that you can defend against it, so that you can sidestep it and evade it and avoid the storm that they are attempting to drag you into. And that's why, long sort of winded way around of saying it, that's why in the subtitle this week it says keeps on raining. Keeps on raining, levee's gonna break. Do 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 do. If you don't know the song, and check out Led Zeppelin, Levee song. It's not exactly a complex song, it's no majorly cryptic lyrics in it or anything, with any deep philosophical, inspirational meaning. There is to a degree, but it's more about just that building of pressure, the steady drip, drip, drip building of pressure, which is what is happening at the moment. We are approaching that funnel point. I've heard many people use the phrase recently of the eye of the needle, and we're going to get infinity view for a few moments while I just sort out my screen share to which one I want. Now, that was Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin. Yes, I was listening to it earlier. I'll put link in side chat for this. And this is continuing some of the things I've done in the recent broadcasts, like I did last week, where I've basically been pointing big fat fingers at the many examples that are now building up of, yes, folks, this is what you think it is. Stop succumbing to the dissonance, to the ringing dissonance that clouds your thinking, blinds you and stifles your hearing so that you can't actually see this thing for what it is. It is what you think it is, and more people are starting to realize that now, and more of them are starting to speak out in one way or another. This is Dolores Cahill, Professor Dolores Cahill, speaking at the Time for Change protest Dublin, as it says at the title of the video. As I'll often say with stuff like this when I screen share things, because I don't always do a whole lot of screen sharing, often just to show links and things like that. But these are just available on YouTube. I didn't go via any particular channel. I just looked, was looking for links to the protest in Dublin, to the rally in Dublin. So that's a link for that. If you've got half an hour, you're willing to listen and actually listen to what she talks about and the information she talks about, and a lot of the inspirational things that she mentions that are beginning to happen now, because the rain is continuing. And you can spell rain REIGN if you want to. It's the same effect. Remember, we're talking about the corona virus, the crown virus, the chakra that rules your thinking And government means to manage your thinking or to govern your thinking. So this is about governing people en masse. Yeah, it keeps on raining. They are constantly drowning us in this rain. You know, I've talked before about the metaphor, the analogy of Noah and the ark, etc. They are pouring the rain down on us at the moment. And that rain is heavier in certain places around the world. So because that rain is pressuring on that levee, the levee is beginning to break and develop leaks. And these leaks are becoming a flood, and that flood is becoming the outpouring of people willing to stand up and at least look at the information and discuss it and consider it for what it really is, rather than just running away in fear from it because it's something outside of their normal. They're not used to the questioning concept of distrusting your own government and looking at their methods and their practices, what they're actually causing to happen in the world, as being from ill intent. Because we're all taught to think that the government's there as our servants and they're our friends and they're doing stuff for us to take care of us because that's what you pay them for, isn't it? But the reality is different to that. So this is just one example. That gathering, that rally recently in Dublin. And there's been other get-togethers and rallies over the week. This is leading up to an event in London, which I think is this Saturday. It's 29th. So yeah, that would be this Saturday, wouldn't it? There's a gathering in London similar that I'm not sure whether it's going to be about the Save the Children or anti-child abuse like this one in Nottingham, or whether it's going to be anti-mask, anti-vaccine kind of demonstration. I know a lot of the groups that are organising it and being involved in it are more connected to the virus question more than anything else. But a lot of this stuff is starting to get intermingled with the narrative creators of the system itself. The system will happily enable and then appropriate groups, protest groups, activist groups, etc. Like this, I've paused it at this particular point because this was when the majority of the group that had gathered to protest, which was a few thousand, according to some of the media, there was only a few hundred there. This is in Nottingham, thanks to Mark Solana was there and videoed it. According to some of the media, there was only a few hundred there, but you can easily just watch the observable proof, the objective proof of the first-hand witness context that no, there was a few thousand people there. And I paused it around this point because this was when they'd got to the town centre. And lo and behold, just over the other side of the little square there, if I can get back to that bit where they're showing it. Hang on. No, it's a bit further ahead. I knew I shouldn't have moved it. But there is a point, maybe that will do. The opposition on the other side of the little squared off area where you've got the police doing their little job of, just standing around attempting to look intimidating. Some of them don't have masks on. But the other side of the little square there is the opposition, the Antifa and BLM and whatever the particular groupings are that decide to join in on that alleged left spectrum of the political theatre game. These people on this side of the camera are meant to be on the right, and the media has already started labelling them as neo-Nazis and white nationalists and things like that. Usual kind of derogatory, deviant labelling, but it's also purely to serve the purpose of portraying two opposing polarized extremes that inevitably are meant to clash, and it is the conflict that resolves the problem, supposedly. Hegelian manipulation. And I did see some headlines from some of the press saying that there was conflict, there was clashes between them. And at some point, I think later in the video that Mark was filming there is like a chasing up and down the street kind of conflict. That's the kind of silliness, though, that the system wants to happen. They will be quite happy if people start getting physical with each other and it ends up as just physical violence in the streets. That will suit them perfect. That's what they want. Two polarized extremes creating violent conflict and destruction so that the rest of the public demand more authoritarian control on these crazy extreme people who are causing all this destruction. Suits their purpose to justify the surveillance state that they are now enacting. But just to keep the examples going, now to mention, this is just a couple of protests. There's been others, like the one in Holland. I'm not sure exactly where this was. If anybody can translate Den Haag, Binnenhof. I'm not sure if that means it's in the city of Binnenhof or whether that was just the street they were on. But this is a protest in Holland. And then if you haven't seen it, see if I won't be able to play the audio from this browser, but just watch this video as an example of how the protests are becoming beyond the pale. Yeah, old granny. She's just talking to the guy and he decides to swing at her. Yeah, she ain't attacking him. She ain't causing him any physical threat or aggression. But he decides he's got to whack her. That's that need to use violence to intimidate, to cause obedience. And fair play to her. She just stands there and, she goes for him. Why not? Defending herself. But this is a kind of level where an older woman who pretty obviously ain't exactly fit and, she ain't a violent warrior presenting any threat to this guy. But he feels the need to whack her and then push her to the ground. That is, pause it. That is the level we have got to. And this is, like I say, on the back of these various protests where the majority of people are being peaceful. The vast majority of people are being peaceful. They're speaking out. They might be shouting and chanting and things like that, but they're not like trying to cause violence with each other. Even that woman, if you dig out some of the other footage, I've seen other people's footage that cover a bit more of the context prior to this. I'm not sure if it was her that was in a chair, a chariot, one of the electric wheelchair things, or whether it was somebody she was with. But it turned out the police were trying to intimidate them to get them to move somewhere or something. And they were basically just telling them to go away. And the police took it to that level of striking her and pushing her to the ground. And that's before we even get into mentioning things like what is happening in Australia and New Zealand. They really, really want people to get violent. I'll mention this one as well, but we were discussing this before we started live, and we were a little bit questioning about whether this is genuine or whether there's some kind of manipulation from RT with this, because the footage just looks a little bit questionable. Some of it looks recent, but then some of it looks older. Like this section, this is supposedly people protesting at Buckingham Palace, but as we discussed several weeks ago, the crest on Buckingham Palace has been changed, or part of it has been removed. So is this actually an older video clip, or is this a recent one? Which particular crest on which part of the fence was it that had been altered, etc.? But it would suit the Russians quite nicely at the moment if all of the British public are descending into chaos and destabilization. Of course it does, because they're potentially an enemy, so it suits their purpose. But it also suits the purpose of the state system, because again, they can use it as justification to become more authoritarian, to ban protests, to ban these kind of gatherings, to prosecute everybody because they're breaking social distancing. And this is how they will curtail any potential gathering together of people and people power so that they can never present any kind of resistance to the progression of the state agenda. It gets into very simplistic sort of rebellion concepts. They want to keep people disparate and fighting amongst themselves, classic divide and rule, and keeping people apart and preventing them from gathering together in groups in different situations. For example, like going to the pub and chatting with people in the pub. They don't want that to happen because then you're sharing information directly that they can't monitor, and you could potentially be organizing some kind of resistance against their claims to power. To amplify that threat, and this come out just a couple of days ago, thanks to Taz, and Dino shared the link from originally, I think it was in the Metro on Sunday, but I followed through from the link from the Metro because the Metro were just basically copying the Sun article. The Sun claimed that they'd been shown a dossier that was a Cabinet Office presentation. This is the main thing that stands out to me because, yes, the system would be quite happy if the Sun pumps out some fear porn about how there's going to be food shortages and power outages because of the combination of no-deal Brexit and coronavirus second wave. It's the twin-demic. You might have seen that phrase doing the round recently as well. Jeff covered that a little bit, and I've just remembered I forgot to send him an invite. I'll sort that out in a bit. The twin-demic, the combination of no-deal Brexit and coronavirus second wave. So yeah, they'd be quite happy if the public gets, fear fixated on that possible chaos that will be created. If the trucks can't get through in Dover, oh dear. But what gets me the most is that this is a Cabinet Office presentation, preliminary set of, I'm quoting from the image of the document, preliminary set of reasonable worst case scenario planning assumptions to support civil contingencies planning for the end of the transition period. Fucking long-winded bureaucratic title to a PDF document that was presented to the cabinet. But the point is, you do employ the government to plan and prepare for worst possible scenarios. But the fact that they are presenting this to the cabinet right now, where they're talking about things such as, in these bullet points, 1 in 20 town halls could go bust in a second COVID wave, sparking social care chaos. The economic impact of the virus and Brexit could cause public disorder, shortages and price hikes. Public disorder, like the protests we've just been looking at. So they can use this excuse to prevent gatherings because they'll claim that, you just want to get violent because of the chaos caused by Brexit. So you can't get together and protest against whatever. Troops may have to be drafted onto the streets to help the police in worst case scenario. 1,500 are already on standby. We've talked about this kind of thing a few times over the recent months, that they've mentioned this more than once, that they have troops on standby ready to go. And as I've pointed out multiple times, who are the main people, the main groups that are performing the tests at the test centres? The majority of it is now being done by the military units, medical units from the military. So this is not exactly something new, but this is now teetering on an outright reality, as demonstrated in other countries such as Australia, where they have put troops on the streets in certain places. So this is what you think it is, folks. This is not some theory of somebody that reads too much dystopian sci-fi books, too many books about, this kind of new world order stuff. Oh, no, this is real. Social distancing measures and masks will have to continue until 2021 regardless. No mention in there about worst case contingency or only if it gets, much worse will we have to keep this going. No, it's just social distancing measures will have to continue until 2021 regardless. And like I said, Cabinet Office presentation of what they're going to be doing or the plans that they are working with when they are now enacting policy. Supplies of food and fuel are all under threat this Christmas if Dover becomes blocked. And as I say, that's that threat of the chaos of Brexit, because we were such naughty people that we wanted to leave the great and wonderful super state of the EU. So therefore, we're going to have all this terrible calamity, because our country never worked before the EU. No. that timeline didn't really exist. It never happened. But there's bits more in this article, and it is just talking about, potentialities and planning for worst case scenarios, allegedly. But as I've said many, many times, they ask for a mile so that you give an inch. That's part of how the incrementalism, the gradualism works. They threaten something extreme, such as mandatory vaccines, so that when the lighter or alternative, lesser potentialities presented, such as, well, you don't have to have it mandatory across the entire country, but if you work in certain jobs, you do have to have it. And if your employer asks for it, you do have to have it. And businesses, private sector, are allowed legally to demand that you have it if you are on their premises or wanting to trade with them or whatever. Yeah, they'll do it that way. That's the inch. That's the lesser of the threat that you were presented with. They give you the shadow of the big bad boogeyman who's just over the horizon if you don't do what we want. But if you do what we want, then you have to give us this little bit, which is allowing the surveillance state, being normalized to having armed military units working with armed police, militarized police on your streets, potentially at every train station near enough, or certainly all the major ones, potentially at locations along major motorway networks where they can do a stop and check or a virus test if they suspect that you had a sniffle or you were seen coughing in your car while not wearing a mask. Extend, like I said, the article just sort of bangs on about the stuff to do with, what might happen, terrible things. Michael Gove might end up remaining in Parliament. It's such a terrible catastrophe. But to me, the main point in reference of what I'm ranting about is how this was an actual presentation to the Cabinet Office. This is how far up the chain it goes. And, them liking to present Bojo as he's just a befuddled clown. He doesn't really know what's happening. It's not his fault because he's just incompetent and he's a bit of a buffoon. Like when he set his tent up in the wrong place on the farmer's land and the farmer wasn't happy, but it's Boris. No, stop it. That's the story you would tell a child. Yeah, or the abuser didn't really mean to abuse you. He just didn't really know what he was doing. Yeah, no. He knows what he's involved in. If he really had any genuine desire, he would be wanting to step down or he would be calling out the bullshit. But he doesn't. He just keeps going, sorry, folks, I'm just such a buffoon. Look at what happened. I didn't realise that was going to happen. I didn't realise we were going to have armed military units on the streets. Because I'm just a buffoon from Eton, from the Bullingdon Boys Club. Sorry, I'm getting into too much rhetorical ranting. Let's get back to working through my examples. In Northern Ireland, they're tightening the lockdown. I thought this as well on 21st. This is sort of convenient timing in terms of the rally that happened. Was on August 22nd. So the Irish government trying to get this in quick before those pesky protesters start gathering to listen to people like Professor Cahill talk about some facts to do with this virus scare now. So they're going to try and restrict the numbers of gathering. They're going to be more focused police enforcement to deal with those naughty people that are trying to get together. And this is sort of, I think, somewhat of a universal thing, because even though it's sort of talking about Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and whether this is going to be applied across the entire UK and Northern Ireland regime, canton, yeah, whatever. It's just the fact that now they're talking about household testing. And this is going to be household testing where it's not about like you phoned up the doctor and said, oh, I'm feeling like I got some of these symptoms of that their COVID thing. I'm worried I might have the COVID. So, do I need to get checked out? Should I come to see you, Mr. Doctor? No, now it's just where they think there is a possibility of the spread of infection. They just want to, track how the infection is spreading. So based on that justification, they're talking about being able to say, oh, well, that family that lives in number 10, we want to test them we want to test all the people in that street. Even if they've never reported any symptoms, they've not been to the doctors, they're not saying they think they might be ill or, no, we're just going to test all that street. Data gathering, DNA gathering, intimidation in a similar fashion to the BBC licensing. They're just threatening an entire country with random spot checks. This is basically what this is. This is like you're under house arrest and the panopticon operating security system will randomly turn up and want to come into your cell to test you to make sure you haven't got the naughtiness. It is what you think it is, folks. Unless you want to keep living a fairy tale, the stories that you tell to children, like fairy tales like Hansel and Gretel. Why do we have that story, Hansel and Gretel? Because parents wanted to instill into their children an awareness that out in the woods being out in the big wide world, there are dangerous people, there are dangerous creatures, there are dangers. And some of those dangers will disguise themselves as benefits. We're from the government, we come in peace, we're here to help. But the candy that they're feeding you is to lead you into their oven, using that Hansel and Gretel story as a metaphor, as an analogy. I think I mentioned that one. That was a Dutch protest. That was the one outside Buckingham Palace. Sorry, I forgot to put links in for some of this other stuff as well. While I was too busy ranting, I will try and catch up on my own ranting so I can go on, send. It was lagging then. I thought it wasn't going to allow that link. This is, I think, thanks to Dr. Rock for this link from The Last American Vagabond. This is an article showing how there have been multiple studies predicted governments become authoritarian in response to pandemics. Come out only a few days ago, like over the weekend. And it'll show how the authoritarian measures have now grown to include the following checkpoints, which are not necessarily just to check you whether you have a virus, but they're to also question you about things like where are you going, where have you come from, what is the purpose of your journey, what is your legitimate claim to be allowed to be out and about out of your lockdown house arrest. Temperature screenings at some airports, as I mentioned the other day about the CEO of Heathrow talking about they want this now in the airports, which is that beginning of the private sector enabling of the fascistic police state. Contact tracing apps, which will be cataloguing all your movements and contacts, emergency orders, executive orders supporting forced vaccinations, isolation and quarantine. New Zealand, anyone? People are being forcibly tested and then taken away to a camp, and they're calling them quarantine camps. Can you see what it is yet, folks? I know it's a bit of a unpleasant connection to Rolf Harris, considering, you know, some of the stuff that came out about him over the years, but that catchphrase of his suits perfectly at the moment. Can you tell what it is yet, folks? Involuntary quarantine centres, camps. In other words, they take you away. Involuntary. They may not be black bagging you like they've done in previous dictatorial regimes, but they are metaphorically black bagging you. Because once you've been suspected of the infection, you're then not allowed to interact with other people. You're not allowed. Yeah, I'm doing the bunny ears, the sarcastic bunny ears. You're not allowed to interact with other people because you're supposed to be isolating yourself and quarantining yourself. And then they will, you know, come and pick you up in a van and take you to a camp somewhere. Thermal drones watching people from the sky, the roboticized surveillance state, or the automated surveillance state. So there will be no human interaction. There will be no living man, living being, living woman, living entity that has a finger on the button to say yes or no. It will be done by an algorithm instead. Talk of mandatory vaccines, a bit obvious. Face recognition tech, it's all over the place now. Discussion of immunity passports, COVID pass, ID 2020. Oh, Bill Gates connection here. Bill Gates funding vaccine development and owning lots of shares and investments in vaccine companies. And what is he talking a lot about? Immunity passports. Oh, I wonder why he thinks immunity passports will be a good idea. Yeah, being sarcastic and facetious. Censorship of alternative viewpoints, obviously. Raiding of businesses for not closing. That has been happening more and more. Arrests of people violating lockdown. Again, it's building up and building up. Ankle monitors for those violating quarantine orders. Now your home is your prison. Prison Planet, anyone? Nothing to do with Alex Jones. It's just the concept of they are turning your homes, your society, into a massive open-air prison. Roving cops searching for people not in the proper places, which sort of relates to the, checkpoints and stuff like that. But that's an interesting article if you want to read through that. Let me just put the link in for Mark Salon's video because I think that was one that I forgot to put in. The links I've shown that are from like the Sun and whatever, I'm sure people are capable of, discovering or finding those links for themselves. So I'm not going to bother putting them into the chat, but some of these others I will do. The one for the poor Dutch woman getting pushed over is definitely worth sharing, because the more rapidly that goes viral, the less likelihood they are of ever actually disguising it or disappearing it or Google washing it, because more and more people will copy it and re-upload it, etc. So please check that out. And I'll get to this one. This one I do actually want to play the audio for, so just give me a moment. I need to set that up in the other browser so it will share the audio. Paste go, pause that. Right, okay, I'm gonna just hang on. Where am I? I'm looking at the wrong bloody screen again. This is part of the problem now, so you have to have multiple browsers open to enable you to do certain things, because like hosting this StreamYard room will only work in certain browsers, so I'm jumping and swapping and changing between browsers constantly. And share screen, that one, yeah, share audio, share. Right, I'm going to shut up for 2 minutes and let you listen to this.
News leader, KETV Newswatch 7.
My name is Dr. Tapper. I am in private practice in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't wear a mask. I see over 200 patients a week. I come in close proximity with every patient that I come across. Why haven't I contracted this so-called disease? Americans make up 5% of the world population, but yet we take in 65 to 70% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs. We are one of 2 countries that allows pharmaceutical advertisements on the television. But yet 80% of Americans are suffering with a chronic disease associated with poor lifestyle choices. 700,000 people will die of heart disease this year alone.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough? If this is truly about health, then mandate healthy living, exercise, good food choices, chiropractic, outlaw tobacco and cigarettes, processed sugars. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson who stated, if people let the government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in a sorry state as those souls who live under tyranny. You see, God made your body self-healing, self-regulating. If you give the body what it needs, it can be healthy. It is like the wilted plant that sits under the sun. An allopathic model to that is to shield the sun, to protect that plant against the sun, cut off its leaves, medicate or vaccinate that plant. But an epigenetic approach, a wellness approach, is to give that plant water, and it can be well. You see, your body is no different. We must eat well, move well, think well, and we can be well. In other words, your level of health is the genetic expression of your lifestyle choices. And I know full well that your body's ability to heal itself, to overcome disease and circumstances like corona, is far greater than anyone has ever permitted you to believe. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, a time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men and deny equal privileges to others. That time is now. These masks have absolutely nothing to do with health, but everything to do with the complying with a false flag, tyrannical agenda. If we sacrifice our precious freedoms for temporary security, we will lose both. If you can't comprehend that statement, if you are blind to this agenda, then I am sorry. You have the eyesight of an eagle, but the vision of a clam.
It helps if you remember to unmute your microphone as well. Sorry, I missed the stop button at the end of that video then as well, so it jumped about a bit. But I think he says it quite well. Have you got the vision of an eagle, but the sight of a clam? Can you see this thing for what it is, yeah?
Another one with anger issues, though, yeah?
Yeah.
And this mid-month astrology update is really worth watching. And what I'll do, I'll just do the, I'll just click through what the guy is showing you. You see on the left-hand side,
Did you put
24 degrees. Yeah, I did. You see where at the top left, yeah, you've got Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter. They're all in retrograde at the moment, yeah? And Mars is square to just between Pluto and Saturn. But if we go forward on this a little bit, we see the progression and how we got here. Yeah, Mars went into Aries, which is its own sign, a very powerful sign for Mars. Yeah, June 27th, August 4th squares Jupiter. Going forward, remember it's going forward. Yeah, August 12th squares Pluto. 13th Pluto. Yeah, then we've got. August 24th, Mars squares Saturn. Yeah, so it's gone past all 3 of them, creating tension because Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn are literally the powers that be, but they could be you or me if we knew how to take that power back. Yeah, but now Mars is going retrograde. September 9th, it's stationary. Yeah, so now we've got September 29th, back at Saturn, going backwards, creating all this confusion. So it's not just going to be August, yeah? We're going all the way through September, yeah? October 9th, yeah?
Is that Pluto?
Yeah, that's Pluto. And then Jupiter again, retrograde, and then we go.
October 9th, which October 18, which would be a 9. So I'm just looking at the dates as well while you're doing it. So
Yeah, and this will be carried on. I mean, you could mark these dates. They're slow-moving planets. This is where Mars is stationary, then it goes back again. December 23rd, yeah, with Jupiter. No, square Pluto. Which one's that? Yeah, Pluto, because Jupiter's moved forward. Yeah, it's moved past Saturn now. Because the top three were retrograde. Yeah, and now they're all moving forward again. So right after December 23rd, yeah, we've got all this action going on. Right around to January 6th, Mars enters Taurus, so it won't be quite so strong. So all the way up to December, yeah, we can have trouble. September especially.
That
October.
adds in well to them pumping out the stories about, as we approach Christmas, the Brexit deadline, which is January next year, is going to create all this chaos, or they're threatening the chaos.
Yeah, they're already preparing for the fake COVID numbers by saying, "Oh, there's going to be flu around as well," and you can bet how many people will get flu and how many it will be COVID.
That's what I heard. That's what Jeff C was pointing out. The twindemic. They've given it this new meme-friendly hash name. Now it's hashtag twindemic kind of thing, and that's what they're pushing. The concept of, well, we're going to have the COVID and the flu this season, so it's going to be extra worse, folks.
In the meantime, a good thing to share is the Tony Heller videos of how Sweden dealt with it, and you can see the herd immunity. I mean, it's a horrible phrase, but it's an actual, it's an actual fact. The herd do get an immunity, and that's how they've handled it. Yeah, and it
spreads exponentially. Once it begins to take hold, it spreads exponentially because of the way we're all interacting with each other.
Yeah, I mean, what New Zealand is doing by quarantining people that come in the country, they could be in lockdown for 5 years doing that. Literally.
And they're potentially perpetuating the existence of the virus. Because what happens if those people that are in quarantine don't get cured and it happens to escape again, or they think they've cured them? And this is all arguing from the point of view of if it even exists in reality, etc. Yeah? If they think they've cured them, but they haven't fully, they then let them out back into the public, and the public have been isolated from the people who had the infection. Therefore, the public haven't had the opportunity to develop a herd immunity or antibodies against it. So all of a sudden, they're reintroducing it back into society. So, like I say, they're potentially perpetuating its existence by putting them people into a separated quarantine kind of environment. I'm not saying that, sick people should be paraded through the street and we should all come out and lick them so we get the illness. But it's just the reality of them attempting in one way or another to extend the narrative, to extend the lifespan of the narrative so they can keep this going into next year.
And let crazy governments just do what they want, just act out any legislation they feel they want to do. And seeing that image is coming out of Australia. I watched something Max Egan put up yesterday, I think, and just he showed a few images on that people had taken in the street of how, a similar one to what you showed, two ladies, elderly ladies sitting down, just being battered, told not asked to move, just attacked.
Yeah, because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. So this is what, like you say, this is how bad it's got in those countries, and the pushback or the awakening or whatever, or the people who are seeing this happening around them, and then seeing all the evidence coming out now of how fake this all is. It's not real. People just are seeing it now more and more and more, and just the way they're trying to hang on desperately now with all these emergency powers and stuff. And that's when it's, well, what did you vote for? This is what they can do. This is what they do, governments. They will lock you down and do all these things when they're pushed, or they feel that there's an excuse to do it, and they're using this as the perfect excuse to do it.
Mm-hmm. Makes a perfect cover story and scapegoat and justification.
We were all freaked out and panicked. Oh, sorry. Well, it's too late, isn't it?
like that one article was talking about, there have been several studies that clearly show that when presented with the threat of a pathogen, a deadly pathogen, governments inevitably become more authoritarian because it's all based on their principles that the only way to deal with it is to control the movement of people and thereby control the movement of the virus or pathogen or whatever it is. So they will lock down, they will restrict movement, they will restrict in exchange, you going into a shop and exchanging for goods and whatever. They will restrict that because they see it from the point of view of that's how you curtail the spread of the whatever it is, the bio threat.
Go on, sorry.
Just as another example, now I'll just show this one. I think Dr. Rob put this one in as well. I'm sorry if I'm misattributing who's sharing these links. It's just often now that there is such a saturation of information that, the links are just coming from every direction at a constant pace. So I don't always remember exactly where I've seen things, when people say, where did you get that link from? Or where did you get that info from? And it's like, I've watched about 100 videos today, so I'm not sure. Let me try and remember. This is from Jeffrey Tucker. I was trying to remember his name then. Jeffrey Tucker. I'm not exactly that keen on Jeffrey Tucker, but I'm not saying he's not a logical and rational person, a being. He is, so I'm not disputing what he's saying here. It's just there's other stuff about him I'm not keen on, but whatever, that's just me. This is his summary, or a friend summarised for him the situation as it's ongoing in Australia. All right, so this is in Melbourne. Police may now enter anyone's home without a warrant. Curfew at 8 p.m. A $1,652 fine if outside without a valid reason. And that amount is being raised and the threat of the total amount is being increased. They did similar here in the UK, if you remember, a few days ago, or last week. They were talking about £3,200 fine, or making the threat of that kind of level of monies. Can't visit any family or friends. $200 fine for no mask, mandatory masks at all times. Can only exercise once per day for up to 1 hour, just like you're in a prison, locked down. Only one person per household per day can leave the house, including for groceries. So you have to have a designated driver. You have to have the designated explorer that's allowed out to go and get your victuals, whatever you need. Can't go more than 3 miles from your home. So you've got to hope that everything you need is within 3 miles. Weddings are illegal, which is just a weird thing to even just say. It just stands out to me that weddings are illegal. It's just sort of like, what? No gatherings of any size. That fits into a lot of other stuff we talked about, like them preventing numbers of people getting together. Armies on the streets fining and arresting people. Arresting people. That means they've been given the same powers as the police force, or they're using military law to do it, which presents even more possible worst case scenarios, because military law is not the same as civilian law. Since March 21st, a total of 193,740 spot checks have been conducted by police across Victoria. That's quite a lot of spot checks. Protest activism is illegal. People have already been arrested for peaceful gatherings. Media is extremely biased, calls protesters right-wing conspiracy nutjobs, and won't allow discussion of whether these lockdowns are right or not. Several thousand people were placed under house arrest and unable to leave for any reason, with food rations delivered by the army, leading to appalling levels of personal trauma. Well, it goes on. I'm not going to read them all out because several more.
Just made me laugh though with that spot checks. I had a friend who had acne once. He used to get stopped a lot for spot checks. Sorry.
You'll be here all week, folks.
Sorry.
T-shirts are available in the auditorium.
I like the billboards outside on the street in capital letters. What are you doing? Stay home. You know, I mean, you're walking out the front door and it's there in your face. Oh man, horrible. Horrible.
Find some of the meme images which some of the guys have been sharing recently because some of them are brilliant. Spot on.
If anybody, I've got to go in a minute. If anybody talks to somebody from Victoria or even New Zealand, tell them about the pots and pans out the window. That can't be illegal. They can't fine you for that. Yeah.
For making noise.
Yeah, for making noise out your window, and you'll see how many people join in. Even if it's 1 in 10, it's over 1 million in Melbourne, I think. Yeah. Damn, man, people need to, they need that solidarity. Because the weird thing was, at the beginning of the lockdown here, when people were clapping for the health workers, they were clapping for health workers. More than anything, they were just saying hello to the neighbours, They was enjoying the community feeling. Yeah. So it works two ways. It can run both ways, yeah? And especially if they were made to clap for the health workers in Australia, all those people that clapped and are now getting a bit pissed off about it, or they're seeing empty hospitals, because they must be empty, huh? They've only had 100 deaths since the bloody thing started, and the hospitals are all empty. Man, people don't feel like clapping them anymore, I know that much.
Let me just find the one image that I think Dean just put in. Where is it? The stats for Victoria.
He's a cracker, that dog.
That one just flashed up, yeah.
She's the fear is the faith hugger.
That's a good one.
Total number of tests, negative tests, negative rate 99.14%. Positive tests 0.86%. Total deaths 282. Fatality rate from those, I haven't read all the numbers out, but you can see them on screen. Fatality rate 1.96%, which is less than the flu on average. The flu usually is around 2. Recovery rate based on the positive tests 98.04%. Population of Victoria 6.6 million. Mortality rate equates to 0.005%. So therefore, there is a 99.995% chance of survival. And yet they are resorting to extreme draconian measures to lock down their population. If this was compared to the stats from even just last year for the flu, did we lock the entire world down for the flu? No. And there's other things such as tuberculosis and things like that you could use as a comparative example of, well, if we're going to shut the world down because of a potential pathogen, like that doctor was shouting about, well, why haven't we shut the world down for all these other things that are constantly still in our environment?
There's another one. There's another one to add to that, and that's the 2 COVID things from Derek Bro's Conscious Resistance. 2 COVID reports, yeah? The second one was a study by a Gallup poll, an official poll, asking people, what do you think the chances are of dying of COVID? And then they asked people, how many people, what's the percentage of people that have died were under 40? And people were saying, I think it's about 30%. And it's like, less than 1%. Yeah, so people are massively exaggerating their own danger. Yeah.
Because of the way it's being presented to them by the media.
Yes, that's the only reason they're believing the hype and the bullshit, as we say. It's turn the telly off, guys. Switch it off.
I was just looking to see if, and I'm not sure if she's still got it on her channel, but Vanessa Beeley.
Yeah.
It seems. It is there. There it is. Right. Okay. Cool. I'll get that link in the chat box because she's uploaded to her channel recently the Pandemic Part 2. Hopefully that link works, because it probably will include the playlist. That might be why it's such a long link. But if you can't get that link working, just search for Vanessa Beeley channel, and on her channel recently, within the last week, she's uploaded the Pandemic 2, or Part 2. It's not its actual proper title, but whatever, it is Part 2. If you've seen the first one, where they're talking primarily with Dr. Mikovits, this is sort of continuation of that, and a lot of it is to address the so-called debunking and fact-checking that was done on the first one. That's two fairly worthwhile documentaries, or video content that's worth your time within the last week. One is that Shadowgate, and now Pandemic 2. If you haven't seen that, it's worth checking out. And again, it'll help, I think, people focus on the way, as you say, if you look at the media, you may get the impression that you're under a constant imminent threat, quite a large threat, people thinking that it's going to jump out and get them at any moment. Whereas the reality, even if you look at their figures there, by that I mean the system, the Office of National Statistics and whatever, you can just examine their own figures, compare it to other illnesses, and see how absolutely ridiculous the projection of fear is. It is literally that, false evidence appearing real. They're making a molehill look like a giant exploding volcano, or they're trying to. Trying to paint it as something extremely dangerous that's still around, stuck in the environment, that we've got to constantly be afraid, can't talk to each other, you can't sing. That's the latest one, the announcement they're going to stop them singing, was it Jerusalem, at the proms, because they can't have people singing. They might end up spraying stuff on each other, because the level of dissonance and inability to use their own cognitive function means that we have examples like this. Thousands of Seattle Democrats gather in person to demand mail-in voting because it's too dangerous to vote in person. That's look at them. I mean, I'm taking it as this is genuinely a photograph of them all gathering together. And if it is, then they're all gathering together in public, but they're worried about going to a voting booth where they'll be gathered together in public. That is the level of dissonance that requires the same kind of, and I'm not saying this to be disparaging, but it's the same kind of infantile thinking, childish thinking, where even when the child encounters the parent dressed as Father Christmas in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve, and he's putting the packages next to their bed or something, and they wake up and see him, and he's like, "Oh, I am Father Christmas, honest, it's not me, Daddy, it's Father Christmas." The child believes that because they want to. They don't know any different. They don't understand that level of deception. So they just accept it, even though their own senses would be saying, "Oh God, that's Dad. He's wearing a fake beard, but I can tell it's him. But I'll play along and pretend it's Father Christmas." I'm just sometimes I'm lost for words, which is something.
Have you seen
This one. Police raid man's home, forcibly quarantine him for refusing COVID-19 test. I think this is coming out of, or is it Australia or New Zealand? But just to show you what it says on here, you must undergo a test for COVID-19, comprising the taking of samples in accordance with the blah, 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 national guidelines, blah, 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 and in any event, within 24 hours of the making of this direction. Right, so he's got to report and to get tested. And the other part, just to show the sort of threat of this, It is an offence for a person to fail without reasonable excuse to comply with this direction, punishable by a fine of up to $20,000. So that's a financial threat to require you to turn up to be tested. And as we point out, in particular with New Zealand, if you test positive, you get taken away to a camp. Can you see what it is yet?
There's one there just for top that one off, Cookie.
What can we
I've
say?
got it on the screen share there.
Hang on, 1 sec. Let me stop this screen share.
It's there, isn't it? If people, like I say, there must be the coming. Like I say, we've seen little pockets of people. You showed little pockets there, and those clips of people out in the streets, not happy. So
2 hours ago on the BBC,
Yeah.
dead babies on the beach.
Yeah.
That's my answer to most of when the BBC does this kind of shit. That is exactly what this is: emotional manipulation and an
Yeah.
attempt to amplify the sense of threat, the fear in the reader, the viewer of this content. It could be you. Look, here's an example. This silly, crazy conspiracy theorist guy and his wife died, and he wouldn't be able to be next to her bedside when she died because of the COVID. Think of the horror, the terror, all the emotional trauma.
what does that
Baby on the beach.
what does that
US and
say there?
Canada.
It says specialist disinformation reporter.
Yeah.
Are you for real?
Honestly,
Wow.
I'm
I
sure
can't
they've
believe they
definitely
put that on there. Fuck.
They've definitely got somebody sat there just watching social media. As soon as something comes out, they seem to have a debunking report ready.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
a day or
yeah.
two later, boom, it's there. It's like the doctors one. They had a group of doctors, actors most probably, sat there saying, with the masks on and all that, saying it's all a hoax, it's not happening, that people are collapsing on these and you don't get lack of oxygen. I wear them all the time.
You're right, Dino. They have these things waiting in the wings all the time. We've seen it over the years with various subjects we've covered and talked about. There's like conspiracy theories or whatever, and chemtards or whatever, and they've done it all. You know, geoengineering. You know, that was like I say with the chemtrail stuff. That was back in the day when they pull all that apart. They pull everything apart, and then introduce distractions like the other stuff, like flat Earth and other bullshit to get you going.
Yeah.
So
notice in that second paragraph where they're implying that the conspiracy theories are deadly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody talking about conspiracy theories, that's potentially putting your life at risk because they're crazy and they don't know what they're talking about, and you will get COVID and then you'll die. And oh no,
vaccines, they are good. They're good, apparently.
Yeah. Which causes people to attack anyone that raises any questions or any alternative information, who, asks them the kind of question like, well, hang on a minute, mate, how do you know she had coronavirus? How do you know she had COVID-19? Is it because the doctors told you that? How do the doctors know? Is it 'cause they
underlying health
relied on that
conditions.
text?
Yeah.
And what was it that actually killed her? Because I guarantee you it wasn't SARS-CoV-2. It was some other complication that occurred during her illness, most likely pneumonia, because that is the most common thing that is killing people that they are then relabeling as COVID-19.
Yes. Yeah.
Seen that. Her husband explained that the couple did not follow health guidance at the start of the pandemic because of the false claims they had seen online. Brian continued to work as a taxi driver and to collect his wife's medicine without observing social distancing or rules or wearing a mask.
Yeah. That is I've just been looking for my image quote of it. There it is, so I can show this. Open with that one because that's the quickest and easiest. Do a quick screen share. And this is classic propaganda, especially wartime propaganda techniques. Naturally, quote from Hermann Goering: during the Nuremberg trials, quote, naturally the common people don't want war, but after all, it is the leaders of a country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. This is easy, and this is the main point. Sorry, I'm interjecting, but to carry on with the quote, all you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in every country. And what they are doing with those kind of, and I mean, that article could classically be put in the infodemic folder, as in that was probably an article designed to suit the agenda as described at Event 201 that they classified as infodemic, and how they would counter the online discussion or questions that come up, yeah? So they label anyone that questions as being a direct threat to your life, because, like it says in that article, or said in that article, you know, they believed something they saw online, therefore he didn't protect himself in the way the government told him to, therefore his wife got ill and died. So those people talking about conspiracies or asking questions, it's their fault. And that's exactly what it describes as. All you have to do is tell them they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism. Denounce the pacifists is the same as saying put the blame on the people asking questions. Yeah, and that way the public start to attack those around them that raise questions, you know, that counter the government narrative or try to present other information. The public will start attacking them. They'll blame them for the illness.
Yeah, we've seen people reacting as well. I saw a video of, I don't know if we talked about it last week or it was just a few days ago. There's been a few of them, but a guy getting punched at the tube station in London. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
That was quite bad. And this guy who punched him had a pushchair and little kids with him, and then walked off. So just people are like ready to snap, you know, or just anything, you know, triggers them. It seems. Like I say, turn the telly off.
It goes back again to. I say it goes back again. Like I know everything. Yeah, I feel it goes back to the kind of thing I've been trying to describe for the past few weeks. How you could describe it as the terrain theory for psychology, rather than terrain theory as applied to biology, but it's a terrain theory of psychology. They are immersing people into an environment where there is this constant projection of a threat, of a danger, an invisible enemy, a phantom menace waiting to get you. So that means people are constantly put into the fight or flight mode of thinking, which you know, usually comes along with a very short fuse, because everybody's on that adrenaline edge of at any minute I'm going to have to run to escape the beast, or I'm going to have to fight it to stop it from eating me. So they're on that testy point of, you know, they encounter anything that blocks their path. It's a bit like road rage. I think this is what leads to road rage. The terrain theory for road rage is that people being in the bubble of their own vehicle feel that their desired progress cannot be impeded, because within their little bubble there is just them. So therefore all that matters is their own progress. So when they encounter something in the environment that intercedes or prevents their progress, they instantly get to that fight or flight mode of this is some kind of threat that is trying to get me. So it becomes that projection of testosterone driven anger, yeah, like road rage is. But terrain theory of this is the majority of people are being pushed, or they're trying to push them. I know not everyone is succumbing to this kind of shit, but they are trying to push the public into that frame of mind, so that almost in a Pavlovian way, whenever they snap their fingers and say, hey folks, that guy over there is the enemy, that guy who just asked a question, he must be one of those deadly conspiracy theorists, he's worse than the virus, get him. And everybody will be so on edge that they'll just go, yes, that's the enemy I need to deal with. Because that's part of what fight or flight does. It shortens the rationalization process in your thinking. So you look to identify the threat and address the threat as quickly as possible. So if somebody in that environment says, that's the threat there, you will instantly go to that thing. And it's not everyone that will be able to curtail their projection towards that threat. There's less people that would go, hang on a minute, let me look at it and decide, is it actually genuine a threat before I jump on it? Unfortunately, because of the way the system indoctrinates and manipulates people, most people fall into that category of fiery torches and pitchforks. When the mayor of the town says, that guy there's the monster, they all come running with their fiery torches and pitchforks.
Or
That's how they're manipulated. That's that terrain theory I'm trying to describe, psychological terrain.
I was going to say hit first and ask questions later sort of approach.
Yeah. When you're presented with something that is allegedly a mortal threat, because that's how they paint or trying to paint this thing, even though like some of the images just showing the statistics for Victoria, even though it's not a threat in any way compared to so many other things that are already in our environment, but they want you to perceive it as that kind of deadly mortal threat, which means people are in that fight or flight, ready to fight mode. If the whack-a-mole thing pops up, they're like ready to go, bang, get the whack-a-mole. Because all their thinking is concerned with survival, because they've been told they're in a survival situation.
Yeah, like I say, in the mainstream media don't give up on this relentless spew of shit and fear.
Certainly not the BBC.
No, well, none of them.
They are geared for that kind of thing. They are in the top echelons of how to use language and media content framing and scripting and NLP and emotional manipulation. They are well versed and well trained in that, and they are very well practiced now that they've had multiple decades to perfect it. You can even go back to radio. In the days of radio, they were already taking it from that point of view. And I know we've talked about this kind of stuff a lot over the years, and I'm sure at some point I've mentioned the fact that even back in ancient times, Plato describes in the Republic how the media, the Medea of the drama performances of the theatre that the people loved and enjoyed had to be controlled and monitored, because through that theatre, the people, the populace, could be influenced.
Yes.
So the media is an arm of the state. So the BBC absolutely is the propaganda arm of the state. So of course they will pump out shit like that.
And your Hollywood and entertainment and your music generally.
Yeah.
Just to throw that in as well.
A good example for that one was that recent, I like what Pockets of the Future calls it, Madam Expiration Date.
yeah, Madonna.
You know that thing that used to be called Madonna?
Yeah. Yes, that thing,
That song and the video recently about, not all of us will get to the future. And the background dancers are all wearing gas masks with a crown of flowers, a corona of flowers. And she's all in black, like a typical kind of bondage gear shit.
Dark
singing
witch.
about how not everyone's going to get to the future. Your media is polluted with this kind of manipulation. So you do have to have that awareness about it. Like I was talking about right at the start with the Sun Tzu quote. This is not about just ignoring this shit. You cannot just ignore it. If you ignore it, it festers and gets worse. And just because you ignore it, just because you think you're above it and you don't need to deal with it, what about your neighbour and the town down the road and the country over the ocean, the other people that are being influenced by that shit? At some point it will come and knock on your door because you were too busy ignoring it and you didn't realise that everyone else in your country has all been infected with it. So all of a sudden, they're all knocking on your door going, you're the odd one out, you're the monster. because you chose to not address it and tried to just ignore it. Yeah? This is what, it's not a matter of being obsessed with it or giving it power, but if you can't look at it and call it out for what it is, then it will just keep biting you in the ass again and again and again. Yeah. Keep looking at that media stream and only relying on that media stream, then I've got to share that picture again. All
Yeah,
you're
good
going to
luck.
get is that shit in your head. Yeah.
With a dog.
Yeah.
There's, I've just come across one here. It is Mail Online. Premier Daniel Andrews says Victoria's state of emergency will be extended to 18 months.
What?
And strict lockdown will continue in September. Another 15 coronavirus deaths overnight.
For 15 deaths. How many flu deaths were there? It probably won't say on that, right? They probably won't mention it at all. The stats will probably be there if you go looking for them. But,
It's the stats that are here is the embattled state recorded just 116 new cases and 15 additional fatalities. The deaths brings the state total to 430 and nationwide number to 517. The number is the lowest record since 5th of July. Go away. Got moth-sized bats in here again.
I keep getting moths as well when I have the window open. I don't know what it is. It must be all the wet weather has caused them to hatch a lot or something. Keep getting flutterers as well.
That's another one you want to watch for as well at the moment. The false widows. It's mating season, and they're aggressive as fuck at the moment, and you do get them wandering around your house. They get mistaken a lot by the wolf spider. They're very similar, but 90% of the time it's the false widow.
Okay.
And they can put you in hospital.
So don't sit on any false widows.
You can
Hello
tell
to everyone in
And
the
don't go
chat.
to the airport. Not
I thought I saw Supreme Lord Commander. Hello. I did send you a link. I know if you can't make it, that's cool. But I thought I saw you pop in the chat. That's Jeff C. One of his other channels, Supreme Lord Commander. Because you know what it's like on YouTube. Channels get shut down, so you have backup channels to use for when they do their thing and put you on the naughty step and whatever. But saying hello to people. Mr. Jones, hello. Tinkle Think, hello. And Hive Mind Concussion, hello. I've got solar and satellite. I'm doing my wood cache now, 1,000 acres from the grandfather. Good stuff, man. Definitely.
1,000 acres, wow.
Yeah, start laying down that firewood so it'll be nice and seasoned to get you through the winter. Lots of Tatro, hello. I'm scrolling up quick. I'll say my usual thing. I'm sorry if I miss people out. I'm not doing it deliberately. I'm just trying to give a quick shout out to as many as I can. The Rebel, hello. It depends sometimes. It depends how much it gives me in the chat box as well, because it doesn't always show the entire thing all the way back. New Being, hello. I think people here are more afraid of being without their phone than a virus. Just a thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good. It is a mind virus. The people. I don't want to put everyone in the same stereotype. And it's speaking from an older point of view. I knew the world before even the internet was given to us, let alone mobile phones. So to me, it is an alien concept to have that angst that you have to constantly have that device with you, that you can't leave the house without it, that you can't just go about your day without, I've got to check it, got to look again, got to see what's going on. To me, that's alien. That concept is alien, like a virus. In the traditional concept of what they tell us a virus is, it's supposedly something outside of yourself. It's alien to your biology, etc. But yeah, to me, that need to have that device there constantly is alien. I just don't get it. It's a really useful tool. Yeah, we can do lots of great things with it. It's really good in emergencies and stuff like that for safety reasons, so you can get help and blah, blah, blah. But this idea that you can't exist without it, and this chemically driven impetus, like a junkie addiction to constantly check it and just feel it there, like Corbett calls it the fondle slab, you know, which is a really good way to describe it. It's that thing that you just have to know that it's there. You have to touch it, so you get that reassurance. Yes, I've still got it. I'm still in touch with the world.
All as well.
You're in touch with the world all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Put it down, walk outside, feel your own energy and the way it merges into the energy of your environment. You're in touch with everything constantly. That thing is the thing that is causing you to feel separated, because it's forcing a box onto your perception. That is the trick of the Metatron's cube, you know, the box, like I was trying to describe last week, talking about being stuck in a cardboard box. You know, that's the box of perception they're trying to force on your head.
Well, it's only self-realization that'll change it in people, when they realize it for actually what it is, and you have to come to that conclusion, like you did back in the day when TV was the irritant that got flushed away a long time ago in my life. You know, in that sense.
It's a good example of the
same
cubes,
thing.
The cubes again. I was going to pull this. I think you put this in the chat, Dean. Right.
Yeah.
This is a youth centre. Yeah, and it's called The Hive, and it's got a lot of people would see as an octagon, and they'd think hive. Oh yeah, like beehives, you know, like the honeycomb wax homes of the bees. But that is also actually a symbolic representation of a cube. And there's reasons why those shapes exist in nature, and it connects to the pressure bubbles of magnetic energy pressing up against each other. It's a complex explanation, or it's a long-winded explanation, but the point is, you know, when you see that shape, it represents a cube. So what are they doing to all these youth going into that youth centre? They're putting their minds into a hive mind of the cube. Yeah, like the Borg. That's what they're doing. You come here and we will program you. Yeah.
Well, that's why maybe there's no one there. It's empty, so nobody goes.
Yeah, they're all too busy buying their special masks, so they can drink their Costa coffee. They make sure they got to be able to get that, you know, toxic sludge inside them.
Big Freemason like round here in Northwest, because cotton industry originating in Manchester. Yeah. So all the big knobs overspilled into Bolton and surrounding areas, and they still are. Bolton School, right? So they have the Masters, Grandmasters AGM now.
Sorry, I thought I'd get back to saying hello to people in the chat. I digressed myself, showing images and whatever, and forgot to carry on. Lynn Anderson, hello. I'm just never going to wear one unless they sew it on. I'm guessing you're referring to the masks, to the face nappies, the muzzle.
Just laughing at the rebel comment. Sorry, it's funny. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. This is what I thought tonight. It's just sort of, let's just chat about a lot of this stuff in general. You know, we can sort of, as we do, we mention solutions as we go along. But really, it's a lot of like, well, look at the rain. The rain is coming down now, folks. You know, how much longer can you be stuck in that denial of saying, oh, no, they're doing it to help us. It's for our own good.
Well, you could say the rain is coming down. Yeah, it's on its way down. It's coming. It's finished. It's the last breaths of its existence, maybe, and it's pulling all this shit. And see how daft we all are and falling for it.
And like a rising tide, all that rain will build into a floodwater. I'm using a lot of analogies and metaphors, but yeah, it will build into a floodwater which will overtop the dam. It will overtop the levee. The more they crack down, the more people start asking questions. Wake up in that cliche expression. But that's why I thought this week, just put that in the title. It keeps on raining. They keep on pushing all this shit out at us, folks. It's fertilizer. Now you've got more and more and more evidence when you're chatting with people, or somebody who maybe thought you was a bit of a weirdo, but now all of a sudden they're coming back to you and going, well, you know what you said about that thing? I've seen this stuff in the news and it was making me wonder. And you go, oh, okay, now look, there's even more stuff in the news I can point you to. Look at this article, look at this video, look at this, look at this, look at this. Now they're giving us more and more evidence. They're giving us more and more proof, day after day.
Problem is, there's a lot of false knowers about.
Yes, yeah. As I
With
mentioned,
analogies.
when I was showing clips from Mark Sellon's video of the anti-child abuse rally in Nottingham, I questioned why. You got the kind of QAnon stuff there. The Pizzagate thread is still being pushed. They brought that back in to try and appropriate the damage or damage control to counter the Epstein information and the Ghislaine arrest and stuff like that. So lo and behold, the QAnon is being pushed even more now than ever, especially as we're going up to the election. And they're having a rally against paedophilia and child abuse and all that kind of stuff. And they got a whole bunch of military veterans there, and a lot of them are singing God Save the Queen. And I'm like, hang on, have you missed one of the memos? Because you're talking about the British royal family, you're against the Pedageddon of the system, but you've not been able to connect that connection to No Sweat Andrew, and he's best friends with Epstein and Jimmy Savile, and but you can't realise that by constantly singing "Please Save the Queen" or "God Save the Queen," what is good? That's dissonance again. They still can't quite accept the evidence that they've now been witness to, so they're stuck still with that legacy of patriotic intent, because the Queen and the royals and whatever are supposed to represent the populace of this country, and they're supposed to be our kind of icons that we rally behind. So they want to support that kind of patriotic sense of, I support the people of my country, and that's represented by that stupid old bag with the crown on her head. So I sing God Save the Queen, even though I can see a wealth of evidence that shows that they're connected into this institutionalized paedophilia that governs world politics. We'll get there. Everybody's on their own pathway. Everybody's at the point that they are at. But it does, I do agree with what Dean's pointing out. You got to be aware of a lot of this stuff, and aware that the system itself will attempt to co-opt, appropriate, create false movements to garner your energy and steam valve you off in a limited hangout. Like that's what QAnon is. It's a limited hangout to keep people trusting the plan and never actually doing anything and just waiting for Trump Daddy to save them, and that's it. It's as simple as that. Yes, it gets complicated with all the riddles and cryptic clues that they put out. That's the point. To confuse you with layers of complexity that are meaningless. Get you playing a cryptography game, like solve this week's crossword puzzle. Oh, what are you doing this week, lover? I'm solving this week's Q puzzle. That's your new entertainment. You're not doing the crossword in the back of the Times anymore. Now you're doing the Q puzzle for this week. The Q drop. This shit winds me up.
Watch the left hand while the right hand's doing the trick, innit?
Yeah. Stewie, hello. Sorry, mate. Still
you're all right.
The chat. Still just interrupting myself every time I start doing it. And that's as far as it'll let me go. It'll only go back to just after 9:05. So hello to everybody that was in the chat before 9:05. And I think I said hello to everyone. If I have missed you, I apologise. It's not being done deliberately. I'm just trying to scroll through quick and say hello to everyone as I see them pop in the chat. Alan McVicker, hello. Singing man, check his videos out. He's got a great voice. He does some fantastic songs. And he's out there entertaining people. Yeah, that's the energy of life that is certainly needed at the moment for countering a lot of this bullshit. You know, I like to come at this kind of stuff from the approach of the, look that shit in the eye so that you can address it. But that doesn't mean you then become a learned helplessness gibbering wreck on the floor because what you've just witnessed is so horrible that you're just like, oh, I can't deal with that. That's where you need that energy of life, because life is still here. Like I said earlier, they've been doing this for millennia, trying to get rid of us. We're still here. Yeah. They've been pushing this COVID bullshit. They've been slowly incrementing it, but we're still here. And that pushback is rising day after day. I do really feel within the last few months, a lot more of what I've been trying to do, or the way I've sort of come at this situation, is that I no longer feel a need to go through a lot of the kind of historical stuff to build a proof or to provide a basis for my argument to point this kind of stuff out to people, because now it's there in your street, in your town. Yeah, you're surrounded by it. If you're still stuck in the denial part of this experience, then I can't really help you anymore, because now I feel very much that what it's about is constantly helping people to remember, reminding them and giving them some energy to kickstart their own engine to say, you are still here. You are still alive. There are still things you can be doing. It ain't over yet. Yeah? The fat lady hasn't sung yet. So even though this system is quite happy to constantly project at you things like that BBC story we showed, where, be afraid of people asking questions because they're the dangerous. That is going to keep happening. So the more you address it, the more you build the muscle to deal with that shit. And as they make things worse, which they will, you will need more muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is exercise. This is a training gym. This is a training dojo. To me, this is about helping people build that energy to say, yes, yeah, fuck this bullshit. We ain't having it. I think I phrased it a few weeks ago as, take off the mask, put on the glasses, like that. Let me find that image again in the Skype, because I thought that was one of the best ones I've seen recently. Just nice and simple.
Yeah.
In the meme war, the way a lot of people are fixated on the visual cues rather than any other information, they attach to the visual connection quicker than other things. So presenting people with simple visual imagery like this is just planting seeds. All the fertilizer they're giving us and all the rain they're pouring down is exactly what seeds need to germinate. This is something that Gandhi figured out many decades ago. The best way to bring down a tyranny is to make it overtly reveal itself, because then all the people that are in a slumber from the comfort that has been given them as a liberty from the tyranny, that's the bribe. The bribe is, well, we give you a gilded cage so that you stay in that slumbering state and you don't rise up and counter our claims to authority. And he realized the best way to help people get to that stage of walking away from the system is to help them see the tyranny for what it is. And unfortunately, that means you have to wait until people start seeing those around them getting battered by the system, like that video clip of the old woman getting pushed over. Yeah, that is an example, a direct, simple, observable example of the tyranny and how the tyranny will treat you and what it thinks of you. And it just destroys the delusion that they're here for your health and safety. They're here to protect you and care for you. They're not. They can, at their best, provide some of that functionality. But even that relies on the people that actually fulfill those roles, like the people who work in the emergency services. You know, they're the people at the blunt end of the shovel that are actually doing the job that makes the whole thing happen. The politicians saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to work on law and order. We'll sort out all the crime in this country. He ain't the one that's dealing with the criminals. But that's the delusion game they like to play with the majority of people. So when you start getting these examples, it makes it easier to point at them and say, look, can you not see that this is a tyranny? Yeah, look at what they're doing to you, to all of us. Look at how they're treating you like cattle, like prisoners in a lockdown. You know, you're allowed out for an hour a day. You can't go any further than 3 miles, and you're supposed to just go out and get your groceries and come home again. If you don't, you'll get arrested and given a $1,600 fine and shit like that.
Made me think of that image though, where they're outdoors there. But what happens when winter arrives? The indoor gigs are not going to be happening, are they? I doubt. Not in any kind of manageable form in the social distancing sense.
Yeah.
Unless they mask them up, because you don't have to wear a mask in the pub, do you? And the pub could be packed. Yeah, so it's ridiculous.
That, rave several weeks ago. I'm not sure if it was in Holland or it was somewhere in Europe. And we did cover it, I think, on one of the Wednesday nights, where they're all sat in a chair, and each chair is like 6 foot away, and they're not even allowed to sing along to any of the tunes. They have to sit there and just quietly bop. Yeah, they have to just keep it quiet. Don't spray anywhere, folks, because even though you're 6 feet apart, you know, you still got to be, be careful. Yeah.
No spittle. Yeah.
Or they'll be issuing people with spacesuits.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll do a holographic David Bowie concert, and everybody will be given a spacesuit before they go in. Yeah? We can all be spiders from Mars. But that, I think, is pretty much all I got to rant about tonight. I hope that makes sense. I certainly hope that what I've been saying about how, at the moment now, it's got to the stage where even if it's only psychologically, it is very beneficial at the moment for people to feel that they are not alone, that they are actually part of a multitude, a community, a tribe. For some that becomes things like a country that has a flag and an ideology and whatever. But the point is, we are social beings, and we work better in groups. That's what we do. And this system and a lot of the bullshit that they're pushing is primarily predicated on making people feel separate and against each other and divided, etc. Yeah. So helping people get that sense that, no, you're not alone in thinking this shit. No, you're not alone in asking these questions. A lot of this stuff is making a lot of people question what's going on. So take power from that. Feel that empowerment from that. Yeah? There are a lot more people that are becoming more and more aware of what is going on with this narrative and how their entire life is being manipulated on the basis of it. So that rising tide is building. It doesn't mean it's going to become something violent, which is what the system wants, which is why when I was picking out my examples for tonight, I didn't get any of the videos of the shit that's happening in America at the moment. Not because I'm not wanting to talk about it, but just because the media is filled with deliberately framed, aggressive and violent content, riot porn.
Yeah.
And they're doing that because they want the people to start killing each other. Literally, yeah. So I feel that's sort of like, unless we want to talk about, here's an example of how far they'll try and push people, Yeah, I thought it was leave them out for tonight. I know there's plenty of those kind of links available. If people want to go and check it out, they can quite easily. So I don't need to include it. That's what I felt about it anyway. But
No, fair enough. I mean, I'll talk about it a bit on Wednesday because it looks like civil war.
it is.
Getting bad. It's getting really bad out there. So, yeah.
That latest shooting event.
Yeah.
You know, it's. I don't know how else to describe it other than it is like a, the touch paper, the lighting of the touch paper. It's almost like they're just waiting for that one final spark and the whole thing's going to go up. And it will spread rapidly. If it does start, it will spread rapidly across the country. But yeah, to get back to that, you are part of a tribe. Hopefully you're aware enough to not succumb to the bad aspects of tribalism. But you are not alone. There is a lot more people who are starting to see this stuff, and that should give you confidence and empowerment to not be put off by the bullshit that the media is projecting at us from, the diktat of the government. Hey, James in the chat. James Owen, chat room ninja. But I think that's good enough for tonight.
Yeah, cheers, Cookie, and everyone in the chat as well. Cheers, man.
Quick one, Cookie. You've got Express is actually covering the paedophile stuff outside Buckingham today.
So the Express and RT.
Yeah, it's looking like exactly the same video though.
Right.
And what actually, I'll give you a link. I'll put link inside chat.
So it could be just that particular package that includes that video footage is doing the rounds of the press.
On this one, it looks like the thingy crest is actually missing, Cookie.
Hang on. I've got so many tabs open at the moment. My browser doesn't crash.
I can't make it out properly because I've got it on. I'm on split screen again.
Yeah, I think I need to close a few tabs because it's struggling a bit.
Oh, I've just had to do that. Got a warning up in the corner. Your CPU struggling.
I think it's just the browser cache gets overflowed as well, so things start shutting down on the browser, like bits on the page start crashing and whatever. It does look like a slightly different video. Hang on, let me get some share on it.
Like I say, it's a bit harder to look out because I'm on a split screen and it's about 2 inches. The 2 inches.
Modern technology. We'll be with you in a moment.
No, if we had 5G, you wouldn't have that.
Turn the volume down a bit. Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Oh, the crest there, isn't it? It's the same video, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
There's 2 videos cut. You see it jump.
This one is just the one video, I think. They haven't done like RT did, where they had the other little clip at the beginning.
You know, when they're panning round, just past policeman's, it looks like it jumps. See it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more noticeable on the RT one, that if you watch it after 12 seconds, I think it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It could just be the speed of them turning.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like there's any of the crests been removed. But it is interesting that the Express has picked it up as well and reporting that it is a recent event. That could just be based on a misattribution if they've just picked it up from a news source like Reuters, or even just go away, you horrible people. Yeah, if they'd just copied it off RT, because the Express isn't beyond doing that kind of, plagiarizing, band jumping, jumping on the bandwagon kind of thing. Yeah.
And then you've got that also with her saying she's not coming back in the foreseeable future.
I don't think she will be back. I think she'll stay in isolation until they announce that she's died.
Yeah.
And then the other two will be out. Not the blooming celebrity couple, the other one.
Fergie.
Yeah, and the slaphead. Miss Simpson and the slaphead. Although I suppose Merkel is Simpson, isn't she, really, in that context of Edward and Mrs. Simpson? Basically, Merkel was the same thing, the same storyline played out again for a different generation. So just get back to the chat.
There's nothing come out live about with her, has there, lately through all this?
No.
I wonder if she's dead.
Well, I've seen some people speculate that because what tiny bit of output there's been has all been from the royal household. It's not been like it's a video clip of her speaking directly, and even the that address she did after Victory Day when she was playing the wartime propaganda kind of thing. She's talking about we'll meet again and whatever.
Yeah.
Even something like that could have been pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So we don't know. She's in total isolation from the public, protected by the royal household.
When was the last public appearance? Was it last year? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been the seating in Parliament when they turned up in their civvies. Remember?
She died over winter season.
Yeah, they weren't in their official garb. They were wearing civilian clothes, which could be an indication of a loss of power.
When did she die over winter season? And then they're going to turn around and say, well, Queen's caught it and she's died now.
They're probably busy cloning her right now.
Well, they don't need to, do they? You've already got one. She's that actress. That old woman. She's spitting image. She's actually on a video.
Yeah, the one who did the film on it. Yeah.
Even her house. She's got the corgi. She's got everything.
Yeah. Thanks again to everyone in the chat. I'll wind it up at that and we'll call it an evening.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Again,
Cheers,
Supreme Lord Commander, hello. That's Jeff C. And So Safe, hello. I thought I saw you in the chat earlier. I'll scroll down to as far as I can see in the chat. So, yes, thanks for joining in the chat, folks. We'll be back again on Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel. And we might go over some more of these stories, and I'm sure by then, it might only be a couple of days away, but I'm sure by then there'll be other stuff in the news we could talk about as well. And Steve Tagoose will be on Thursday night for the mystery show. All of these are at 8 p.m. GMT starting time usually. And yes, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing a couple of hours with us, and thanks for your attention. And keep thinking, keep talking, keep asking questions, and keep giving them the finger. Whenever they try and give you their bullshit, just say, no, thank you. Bye. Have a wonderful time. Bye. And click the button. Cut cheese.
Thanks, everybody.